The most important work of your life is the work you do within your soul. This is Home Improvement for the Soul.
Hello, and welcome to Home Improvement for the Soul. I'm MaddiCheers. Thank you for joining us. And today I'm with my dear friend and amazing, wonderful human, Marianne Francisi.
Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Mare. And this is a special edition. We're actually in our second series of 3 that we're going to do dealing with holiday time. And there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of happiness that goes on for a lot of people, but there's also a lot of stress. And for some people, it's just the stress of getting everything done on time, which we think of the very mundane stress. You know, I just got to get here or there on time. I got to go buy a dress. I got to go buy gifts. There's a lot that goes on that causes that stress, but it seems sort of on the surface. But then there are those people, like we talked about last week with my husband, Bob Vetter, who is a healer. Just to remind everybody real quick, he's a healer and a cultural anthropologist. And in our culture, there are the people who really start to deal with the dark night of the soul because they have no parties to go to. They don't have a family or they don't have friends. And at this time of year, it seems like every corner you turn, you're reminded of that. You know, and while there's all this beauty and the lights and the celebrations around you, it reminds people who don't have anybody in their lives that they are sort of left out. They're the ones who are excluded and nobody cares about them. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking how the Thanksgiving address, for those of you that didn't get a chance to listen to it, right around on Thanksgiving Day, actually, if you go back, we posted the Thanksgiving address, the Haudenosaunee address, and it always ends with the forgotten. Mm-hmm. It always has, the last line is, and to those who are forgotten, you are now remembered. And we send to you our greetings, our thanks, and our love, and now our minds and our hearts are one. The thing is that, how do we get that out to the forgotten? How do we let them know? And also, what can they do if they're listening here? What is it that they can do on their own? So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Marianne, who is a family therapist, an amazing author, the head of the HAG Project, helping women like us who are over 50 find our place in the world and come together in circle and in prayer and all kinds of things. And also, she is a brilliant teacher. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Miss Marianne.
So I think it's interesting that most of us know dark night of the soul, right, as kind of hitting bottom and then beginning to rise from there. It is the opening. It's the breaking point. St. John of the Cross, who actually wrote about that, he termed it, he speaks about a point before the rising, where in the dark night, you basically lose hope. You lose faith that God is watching over you, holding you, taking care of you. And he says that at that moment, if you just don't panic, if you can just sink into the night, rest in the night, let yourself fully be there, that this kind of love may surprise you, may come to you in that rest, in that night. And from there, movement happens, right? So it's the idea of sometimes we can be surprised by the love and hand of God upon us, right? Like, oh, where did that come from? I thought it was gone. And then suddenly, and people have stories like that, and it's their miracle stories, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly I felt the presence of something, or I felt a warmth, or my heart shifted in some way. But the key is not to panic. I loved that.
That's brilliant.
How do you just rest in it? Rest in it. Really surrender to it. And I think that's the start of the everyday miracles.
Yeah.
Right? The miracle is a shift in our ability to sort of connect to a love that is ever present, and there isn't much of a separation. Then the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking, I was in the city this weekend. I went to see...
For those of you who are not in New York, the city to us
is New York,
New York City. There really is no other city in our brain. It's Manhattan. So if you're listening from another state, we apologize, but to us, it's the city.
It is. It's always been for me. So I was in New York City with my friend to see her son dance. And it was a beautiful night of dance, and it was late, and we were coming back. We were in Penn Station. It was around 11 o'clock p.m. And at night, many homeless people start to just fill the space. And there were people, a lot of commuters there. And as we're moving through, many homeless people are asking for money, following along, and a certain armor has to go up, right, as you move through this. Looking forward, get to your train platform, wait for your train without much engagement, right? And a little bit of nervousness around it comes up, like, oh, is this okay? Is it dangerous? Survival mechanism starts to rise. So we're moving through it. And there is this one homeless man with his friend. He's in a wheelchair, and he lost his legs from his knees down. And he's yelling at people, but what he's yelling is, don't look away from me.
Wow.
Don't look away. I'm asking. I'm a vet. I need something for you. And people are moving away. And I'm looking, my friend, we're looking, just noticing again to be careful. And he comes and he parks his wheelchair pretty close to where we were standing with his friend. And then this young woman gets on a phone call. And on the phone call, she starts crying. And she's crying and saying, nobody ever likes me. It's always the same. I don't know why I bother, but crying. And this homeless man stops his kind of ranting, and he looks up at her. I'm watching this. His eyes fill with tears, and so sincerely, he starts saying to her, no, 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 no. Don't let anybody ever make you feel that way. You will find someone. Don't let that bring you down like this. And she immediately walks away.
Oh, my goodness.
But I see it, and I cannot help but be transformed by it. I fell in love with him in the moment, right? That's a miracle.
Right.
Falling in love is a miracle. I was just like, oh, and there was no longer a divide between the two of us. That separation disappeared. No separation between him and I, the God within him and the God within me. And I had to just say to him, I was close enough. I just said, oh, that expression was so pure. I used the word pure. I said, it was so sincere and beautiful and generous. And he said, you can't look away from people's suffering. Oh. And then he goes, suicide is real. You know that? Suicide is real. I said, I do. I know that. I said, but your heart was so beautiful. And then he said, well, that's because I'm a Cancer. And now he's speaking my language. I've already fallen in love with him. So I'm just like, Really? Well, that makes sense. Cancer is the mother of the zodiac. It's so much water. It's all about emotion.
Right.
So his friend who's with him starts saying, Virgo. I was like, what? He's like, Virgo. I'm like, oh, are you a Virgo? Yeah. I'm like, do you want to know about Virgo? I was like, Virgos make excellent loyal friends. They do. They are so, once a friend to a Virgo, always a friend to a Virgo. And he was like, all right, see, I'm a good friend. He tells me. And then he said to me, all right, the man in the wheelchair, have a good night, and rolled along. He didn't say, can I have money? Mm-hmm. He did not ask for anything other. The exchange was complete. The gift was complete. What he received, what from me was reciprocal to what I received from him. And I feel like that we have to attune to that kind of miracle.
Yeah.
A shift of the heart.
Yes.
And what shifts the heart is compassion. And as low as we're feeling, someone else is also feeling that low, if not lower. And it's not to say my problems aren't as big. It's to say I am connected to others whose heart is struggling. And then it starts to change.
Exactly. And I think that, it's so funny talk about those little minor mundane miracles. So on my way here, I heard somebody, and I don't know who said this. I've got to get it as close as I can. I heard someone say that if you will not sit down and listen to someone and try to understand them, you will become the oppressor. Mm. You will become the thing you hate. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, like I never, I was listening to Christmas music because that's what I do from Thanksgiving on. I love Christmas music.
It's very uplifting.
It is. And and it's very nostalgic. They were talking about on the Christmas show channel about how nobody wants to hear the modern stuff. People are reassured by and they play every version known to man of every classic Christmas song. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some newer stuff in there, but mostly it's like versions of the classic stuff. So I just turned it on, I think, and I don't really know the context or who the quote came from, but that's what I was thinking about all the way over here, was that if we're not sitting down together and listening and trying to understand the other person and trying to really not turn away from their suffering, mm-hmm. like you just said, and recognize that that's our connection. We have all suffered. Yes. We have all had loss. We have all been in a position where we felt lonely. Mm-hmm. And, loneliness, I've heard people say lately, loneliness is like epidemic, mm-hmm. especially among young people. I was talking to a young person just the other day who was saying how she never has anything to do on New Year's Eve since she broke up with her boyfriend. Mm. And she does get invited to parties, but she's not really crazy about them. And, she does, think that, well, if she could hang out here or there, maybe she'd meet somebody new, but she doesn't really have a plan. And then New Year's Eve hits, and she's like, well, okay, I'm just going to convince myself to be happy sitting and watching my movies and with a glass of wine, and I'm just going to be by myself New Year's Eve. And I think that's sort of what we're saying with the dark night of the soul. It's like if you hit that place, and you know that you're not, this isn't the outcome you wish you had for New Year's Eve, mm-hmm. but you did turn down the party. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the place you wanted to be. You haven't been putting yourself out there to meet people for whatever reason that is. So this is your choice, is to stay home alone on New Year's Eve and celebrate by yourself, then finding a way to turn it into something meaningful for you is the way not to be depressed.
And the other part of it, though, is there's a listening to others.
Yeah.
But we also have the need to listen to ourself and make the way towards that part of ourself that is wise
Yes.
and kind. Because this young woman could be home having made the choice, and as she sits alone, what could rise is a critical voice, right? You're all alone. You've got nobody, kind of like that girl on the phone call that I observed. You're never going to have anybody again. Whatever, we all have it. We all have an internal critic. So how do you listen to that in a way to quiet that and get to what's behind that, right?
Right.
And that's a process. Now, I think that way as a therapist, right? Any of our critical voices, they've kind of developed as protectors.
Yeah.
They're trying to get us to go out more, or to accomplish more, to do things we're expected to do. So they think they're helping, and they're not really.
No.
They're burdening. So to get behind that and be able to get to that wiser self that says, you know what, being home could really be very interesting.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. Let's be curious rather than critical.
Right.
So there is that. The other thing I was thinking when you were talking, Maddie, and I'm just kind of going with it, is the idea of the music, right? How the music really shifts, and Christmas music can really be so, so uplifting. Last night, I watched the documentary on Jean-Baptiste.
Oh.
It's called American Symphony. And he's a musician. And he had come to a point in his life where he was nominated for like 11 Grammys. He was invited to create this American Symphony piece and play it at Carnegie Hall. And at the same time, his wife was battling her second battle with cancer and going through a bone marrow transplant. So really dark and light. At the same time. And you see this process of trying to be both in the joy and the sorrow and the panic of it all as the movie is unfolding. And he said, music is like, as a composer, it's inevitable, like you're waiting. There is something that's calling you before it's there.
Right.
Right? And I think that's with any creative act.
Yes.
Something is calling me. It's not, I haven't formed it yet, but I love it already. And it's coming. There's something coming. And he talked about that in his composing. And the night that he had his concert at Carnegie Hall, his wife had just finished the transplant and she was able to come. And he's on stage and something happens with the power. So they had a lot of technological stuff going on. So it was just him and the piano. The power went down. And he started to just play this piece that he had been working on but wasn't complete. And as he's playing it, they show, like his eyes are closed, just what is going through his mind, which is the flash of his whole life.
Wow.
Like from childhood, when he first connected to music, to everything that was going on with his wife, to his own panic, to his music as really his expression of himself. And he's playing and he's playing. And it is oneness. Again, a miracle to me. No separation between the creator and what he's creating. That kind of oneness that we actually have the power to experience as human beings, as creative beings.
Right. We are
right.
We are creators. We are made in the Creator's image, and we are creators.
So, and then I take it to the spiritual level, because we're talking about loneliness is a crisis of spirit. And it is, if there is no separation between the creator and what they're creating, right? Like between that musician and what he was creating in the moment, then maybe there's no separation between us and God, right? Us and our spirit. But how do we get there? How do we make our way? And making our way can be a little bit of a journey.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's a journey past the parts of ourself that tell us we're unloved.
Right. Yep.
We don't belong. That's
Yes.
that's the shift. That's the internal kind of miracle, I think.
Oh yeah, and I think that when we are looking at other people going through these same things, and we're talking about it like you and I are, and we're talking about how music, and there's all these things that connect us. You know, music is certainly one of them. I mean, Bob was talking about how there's a sound healing device where you take yourself on your musical journey. So you choose music that you love, or maybe music you don't love, or maybe, and you build. You can start with just 3 songs, and you build this journey with music, because music is so meaningful to so many of us. And I think that you hit a really important point, is that if we tap into that creative part when we're feeling anxiety, and for me that my therapist was the one that suggested that I start doing the mandala drawings, and through drawing the mandalas, or mandala, however you want to pronounce it, I received these poems. That's how it all started. These divinely received, divinely dictated poetry that has now, I believe, turned into a message for the world, and so many people have experienced that, and it's not like it doesn't. Most artists, I think, will tell you that this stuff comes from the divine, the flow,
right?
Exactly.
Yes, and so I think what we're coming to, right? We've kind of, in just what we're talking about today, some of the things that are standing out for me is in this shift, that the miracle being some form of a shift from mind into heart, right? So there is the observe from the eyes of kind of love, right? Or even neutrality. I was just observing neutrally in Penn Station when I saw that exchange. And then there was the shift to listen, right? To listen and see what comes to you through listening. Like, again, this sort of step back, using our senses, but connecting it more to the heart. To listen, to look, to begin to just step back from it a little bit. And then there is the more practical, right, which is the mundane, and that is connected to how do we create something that wasn't there before, right? How do we move from panicking that nothing is here, but into more of a space of inspiration and creativity, and allowing ourselves to be there?
Exactly. So I want you to talk about this little miracle you brought into the studio today. So this is just such a brilliant thing. Whoever is doing this, whoever's on board with this thing, I'm just gonna have Marianne explain.
Well, so I found a little rock. It's part of the rock project, right? There's Long Island rocks, where rocks are left different places. But I think the miracle of this rock is it's a beautiful rock, and it says Silent Night. And it's a picture of trees with stars and glittery. And when Maddie came in today and we were talking about her day at school, she was talking about a child who said, when someone gets in trouble at school, maybe we need to have a special rock that they hold called the honesty rock.
Right.
And when you hold it, you just talk honestly about why you did something. And then you give it to the other person and they talk honestly. And it just kind of grounds you in being honest. And then I find this rock that says Silent Night. And we're talking about Dark Night of the Soul and Miracle.
It's all connected.
It is. And why, what's the symbol of the rock, right? It is a sense, going back to that sense of don't panic. Ground in the good. Ground in the good. That there is good. You are part of the good, part of the true, part of the beautiful. And don't panic, right? Yeah. Ground in that and you'll be held. But this like way that just, I don't know, that our spirits work in giving us these connections and signs and ways to kind of understand the mystery of all of it, because it's all pretty mysterious, is so fun.
It is fun.
Really nice. It's beautiful.
Who doesn't like to pick up rocks?
And then think about, why did I get this rock?
Why did it? Yeah, exactly. Last week we talked about one of the solutions to getting out of the dark night of the soul is actually to go do some volunteering. Do something good for someone else. It doesn't mean you have to commit to forever and ever, but just do something nice for somebody else, It
does feel great.
You're right, exactly. So what I love about this rock project is that this is something you can do immediately. You could, if you're finding yourself alone, you could pick up a rock, you could spend New Year's Eve writing, finding these rocks and then writing wonderful messages on them. Or if you're inclined to paint them, which I hope you are, I love rock painting, special front, lovely, wonderful thing to do of mine that I do with my grandniece and nephew all the time because they love rock painting. And then you just leave it. You leave this beautiful, wonderful, inspiring thing for someone you will probably never meet. And it changes their day.
It does.
And it changes yours because you're doing something for somebody else. And even though you're alone, you're acknowledging our connection. It's beautiful. I love that. So that's a wonderful thing. So I think I'm going to conclude, as usual, with one of the poems. And this is so interesting. I always do this. For those of you that don't know this, I open the book and whatever pops out, I'll do a piece of that. So I have little short clips on my phone. So, you can spin your phone, you can, what's that called? Yes. Swiping up. You have to forgive me. I'm old, so I don't know all the technology. But, so I swiped up to this, which is so perfect for what we just talked about. Go see the world for what is new, for what is beauty, what is true. If you can see within her sight, you'll touch the star and light the night. If you will not see with the heart, you'll fail to make the curtain part. For only if you're free from fear, and only if you gather here, we are light in time and space, where love is all our simple grace, and hearts are free and souls renewed. It is the path from me to you. So, thank you all for joining us. I hope you do have a wonderful holiday, beautiful, creative time, lots of fun, however you have fun.
And if you don't worry, just don't panic. It'll pass.
Don't panic.
It will pass, and we'll be on to what's next.
That's right. It's just another day in our, as Janis Joplin said, one long day.
Right.
Just look at it. It's just one long day.
On.
Life moving on. Thank you all for joining us. Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for Home Improvement for the Soul. If you'd like more information, please go to womensoneness.com or MaddiCheers.com. That's womensoneness.com or MaddiCheers.com. See you on the next episode.